All right, so you're keen to bring in some global talent,
It's all about navigating the UK's visa sponsorship system.
which we know can be a bit of a headache.
A bit of a maze for sure.
That's why we're diving into this document today.
It's called
Print UK Visa Sponsorship for Employers. Overview.
straight from gov.uk.
And honestly,
Yeah.
it can feel like you need a law degree to decode it.
So we're here to break it down.
Exactly. We'll cut through the jargon and give you the need to know.
Whether you're an employer or thinking of working in the UK.
Now, you might assume finding the right person is the tough part.
But the sponsorship process itself, that's a whole other ballgame.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially post-Brexit.
Right. Things changed quite a bit then.
Because since the end of 2020, even EU citizens need sponsorship.
Unless they got in under the wire with that settlement scheme.
Exactly, the EU settlement scheme.
So it's really for anyone coming from outside the UK now.
It's the rule, not the exception, you could say.
Wow. So even if you found an amazing designer, say, based in France,
Unless they had settled status, you'd need to sponsor them.
that's a big shift.
And here's the thing, it's not just for those high-paying roles.
Oh. Tell me more about that.
Imagine you're a charity, right, wanting to bring volunteers over.
You'd need to sponsor them too.
Absolutely, sponsorship is a must.
That really shows you how carefully the UK manages who's working there.
It's about having a system, that's for sure.
Okay, so let's say I'm a business owner, ready to sponsor someone.
Great. First things first, they're going to check if you're eligible.
Makes sense. They want to make sure it's all above board.
You're looking for reliability.
Like you're not going to disappear overnight.
Well, more like you're a trustworthy sponsor.
Gotcha. So what are the key things they'd be looking for?
First and foremost, a clean record.
No parking tickets.
Ha ha. Well, those are probably fine.
Okay, good to know.
We're talking serious stuff, no criminal convictions,
Makes sense.
especially anything related to immigration offenses.
Or fraud, things like that.
Exactly. They want to see you play by the rules.
So ethical and legal, check. What else?
Your business itself needs to be genuine.
Not some made-up thing just to get someone a visa.
Precisely. And
Yeah.
they'll want to see your HR systems are solid.
To make sure you're treating your sponsored workers well.
Exactly. Monitoring their employment, making sure it's all above board.
So really, it's about demonstrating you're organized and responsible.
You've got it.
Now, assuming a company passes all those checks,
The next hurdle is the job itself.
right, it's not just about having an open position.
The job needs to fit certain criteria, meet specific requirements.
Like what?
Well, it has to align with the visa category you're sponsoring under.
So a software developer would have different needs than, say, a chef.
Exactly. Each visa has its own set of skills they're looking for.
And I imagine everything needs to be aligned with UK employment law.
100%. Minimum wage, working time regulations, all that good stuff.
No cutting corners there.
Nope. But here's where it gets interesting.
Oh.
You usually have to advertise a job for someone on a religious worker visa.
To show you couldn't find someone in the UK to do it.
Right, but there's an exception.
Do tell.
You wouldn't need to advertise if the role is within a religious order.
Like if you were trying to recruit a monk.
Precisely.
That's fascinating. It seems counterintuitive, but I can see the logic.
It's about those specific needs.
So what about someone coming to the UK on a creative worker visa?
Those are interesting. You need to prove adherence to any code of practice.
Right, like for dancers, musicians.
Exactly. It's about upholding professional standards in those fields.
Maintaining the integrity of the industry.
Exactly.
But what if there isn't a specific code for a particular artistic field?
Then you'd need to show the role fits the UK's appendix skilled occupations.
A catchy title.
Right. And crucially, that the worker would make a unique contribution.
Huh. So we're talking about someone with a very specialized skill set.
Exactly, like a master potter or a world-renowned textile artist.
Now they're looking for that wow factor.
Precisely. And one last point on job suitability.
Go on.
Additional safeguards exist for sponsoring anyone under 18.
Especially in creative fields.
Yes, to protect young performers.
That makes sense. It's a vulnerable age.
It's all about safety and fairness.
It sounds like they've considered a lot of different scenarios
They try to cover all the bases.
to protect to both the worker and the UK's interests.
Absolutely, it's a balancing act.
Okay, so eligibility and job suitability, those are biggies.
Huge hurdles to clear.
But now we're on to the part that always trips me up.
The wonderful world of sponsor licenses.
It's a jungle out there. Worker versus temporary worker.
It's all in the wording, right?
Help a listener out. What's the key difference?
Think about how long the person will be in the UK.
Okay, so duration is key.
and the nature of the job, what they'll actually be doing.
Right. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
The worker license, that's for your more settled roles.
The ones that are more, what, permanent sounding?
Exactly. Skilled positions, often long-term.
So if I'm picturing my ideal candidate, a software engineer, top-notch.
Someone you can see being with the company for years.
Yeah, a real asset to the team long-term.
That's a classic worker license scenario.
Makes sense. It's about establishing a deeper root, yeah.
And then on the flip side, you've got the temporary worker license.
Which is, I'm guessing, a bit more, well, temporary.
I gave it away.
The name might be a clue. But seriously, what falls under that umbrella?
Quite a lot, actually. Short-term projects, bringing in specialists.
We talked about volunteers from abroad, even.
It's designed for flexibility, those specific needs.
It's fascinating how many scenarios fit that temporary label.
Right. It's broader than you might think.
What are some of the, I don't know, quirkier visa types you've seen in there?
Oh, we could do a whole deep dive on those. Scale-up workers.
Is that what it sounds like for companies growing super fast?
Exactly. Essential for those booming UK businesses.
Makes sense. Got to get the right people in to handle that growth.
Then you've got your creative workers, of course.
Always in demand, those creative types.
Adding a little sparkle to the UK's cultural scene.
And we can't forget the charity workers, right?
Definitely not. Shows it's not just about filling those high-paid roles.
It's about managing all workforce movement, even unpaid.
It all comes back to having that system in place.
Right. So whether you're a hotshot CEO or a volunteer coordinator.
The UK wants to know who's working within its borders.
Makes sense. Now, those temporary categories, they each have their own rules, don't they?
Oh, for sure. Each one has its little quirks.
Give us an example, just to illustrate.
Okay, so scale-up workers, right.
Yep, those fast-track, high-growth folks.
The sponsor's responsibilities, they actually end after 6 months.
Wait, seriously? That's it?
That's right. After half a year, the worker's free to fly solo.
So they could stay with the same employer or even move on.
Exactly. No need for a new certificate of sponsorship or anything.
Wow, that's a pretty sweet deal.
It's designed to attract that top-tier talent.
To give them that extra bit of freedom and flexibility.
The UK wants those innovators and go-getters.
Makes sense. Okay, so let's say I've cracked the code.
You figured out which license type you need.
The application process itself, is that as fun as deciphering the license types?
Let's just say, it's thorough.
Ah, I know that tone. Bureaucracy, here we come.
It's all done online now, through the government system.
No more paper forms and endless queues, at least.
Those were the days, eh? But don't get too excited.
Oh, dear. What have I gotten myself into?
They definitely don't skimp on the details.
So paint me a picture. What are the essential steps involved?
Well, even before you tackle those online forms,
There's prep work.
think of it as laying the groundwork.
Okay, so what needs to happen on the company's end?
They want to see you're taking sponsorship seriously.
Showing them we're not messing around.
Exactly. So you need to designate specific roles within your company.
To handle the whole sponsorship process.
You got it. An authorizing officer, for example.
Sounds official. What do they do?
They have overall responsibility, the big boss, you could say.
Makes sense. Someone needs to be in charge.
Then you have a key contact.
Who's that? Someone who's, like, glued to their phone.
Well, they're the main point of contact for UK visas and immigration.
So the liaison between the company and the government.
Precisely. And let's not forget the level 1 user.
Okay, who's got that title and what do they do?
They're your day-to-day heroes, handling the nitty-gritty in the system.
So it's like setting up a mini department just for this.
You could say that. It shows you're organized.
That we're not just winging it. Okay, roles assigned, what's next?
Then it's time to gather those supporting documents.
Proof and more proof, right?
Essentially. And, of course, the fees.
Ah, yes, the dreaded fees. Let's talk numbers, shall we?
Everyone's favorite topic. The fees depend on a few things.
Like what? Give us the lowdown.
Well, the type of license you're after, for starters.
Worker versus temporary worker, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And they also look at whether you're a small or large sponsor.
So a big corporation might pay more than a small business.
That's the general idea, yeah. For a worker license, smaller organizations.
Let's put a number on it. Give us a ballpark figure.
They might be looking at around 536.6, give or take.
Okay, so not exactly pocket change.
Larger companies could be paying closer to 4,476x.
Wow, okay. It's a significant investment.
It shows you're serious about bringing in that global talent.
No backing out now. And in terms of time, how long does this whole process usually take?
From start to finish.
Yeah, give us an idea of the timeline.
Generally, you're looking at about 8 weeks of processing time.
8 weeks. Okay, so not exactly an overnight thing.
But if you're in a real hurry, there's always the fast track option.
Ooh, fast track.
Yeah.
I like the sound of that. Tell me more.
Well, for an additional fee, of course.
There's always a catch. How much extra are we talking?
An extra 500 pounds, to be precise.
Okay, so it's not cheap, but what's the trade-off?
They aim to make a decision within 10 working days.
10 days versus 8 weeks. That's quite a difference.
It's all about weighing your priorities. Time or money.
Decisions, decisions. Okay, let's fast forward a bit.
Imagine. You've submitted everything, paid your dues?
And then finally, the email arrives.
Yeah.
You're officially a licensed sponsor.
Congratulations, you've got your A-rated license.
Like a golden ticket, right?
You've got it. You're officially in the world of UK visa sponsorship.
So what's next? Can I start booking flights for my new team member?
Not quite so fast. You've got your license, but you still need...
To be continued.
You could say that. This is where the certificates of sponsorship come.
Oh boy. More on that after the break. All right, so before we were talking about that A-rated sponsor license.
Your golden ticket, as you put it.
But then certificates of sponsorship came up.
Another layer. I know it can feel a bit like peeling an onion, this process.
Help us out here. Why are these certificates so important?
Think of it this way. Your sponsor license, it's like having a library card.
Okay.
It gets you in the door, gives you access to all the books.
Right, but you can't actually read anything without a book.
Exactly. The certificates, they're the books in this scenario.
Each one is specific to the worker I want to, check out.
You got it. You're assigning a certificate to each individual you're sponsoring.
So I've got my license. I'm ready to start handing out these metaphorical books.
What kind of books are we talking about?
Right, because I'm guessing there's more than one type of certificate.
You'd be right. You've got defined certificates and undefined certificates.
Defined, undefined. Sounds a bit like my teenage years.
Hopefully these are a little easier to understand.
Okay, good. Hit me with the definitions. What's a defined certificate?
Those are for your skilled workers applying for a visa from outside the UK.
So if I found a fantastic marketing director based in, say, Canada.
And they needed a visa to work in the UK. Defined
Yeah.
certificate.
Got it. That's my international recruitment effort then.
Exactly. You'd apply for that through your sponsorship management system.
And how long do those usually take to process?
They're usually pretty quick, often within a day or so.
That's good news, especially when you found the perfect candidate.
You don't want to be left hanging.
Exactly. Time is money, as they say. Okay, so what are those undefined certificates?
Those are a bit more flexible, let's say.
Flexible how?
Well, you might use them for skilled workers already in the UK.
So they're already here, but maybe on a different type of visa.
Precisely. And they're looking to switch over to a sponsored role.
So it's like an internal transfer, in a way.
You could say that. Or you might use an undefined certificate for
Go on.
those temporary worker options we talked about earlier.
Our scale-up workers, our creative workers, those folks.
Exactly. It's kind of a catch-all for those situations.
Where a defined certificate wouldn't quite fit.
You've got it. And here's a little insider tip.
I'm all ears?
When you apply for your license, you need to estimate how many undefined certificates you'll need.
For the whole year, you mean?
For the next 12 months, yep.
So, gotta get those forecasting skills sharpened. Planning ahead is key.
Always. It shows the UKVI you're on top of things.
Now, we talked about license fees, but I'm guessing these certificates aren't free either.
You'd be right. Everything has a price tag, right?
Sadly, yes, that's how the world works.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we looking at cost-wise?
Well, like with everything else, it varies.
Give us the rundown. What are the main factors?
The type of certificate, of course,
Hmm.
and the specific visa category it's for.
Okay, so a worker certificate might be different from a temporary worker certificate.
Exactly. A standard worker certificate will set you back around $239.
Okay, so more than a parking ticket, less than a speeding fine.
A good rule of thumb, temporary worker certificates are a bit cheaper.
Give us a number. What are we talking?
Around $25, so significantly less.
That's a relief. But there's always a but, isn't there?
There's an additional charge a lot of people forget about.
Oh, no, don't tell me. What's this new fee called?
The immigration skills charge.
Immigration skills charge. Doesn't sound like something I want to mess with.
It's an extra fee, basically.
On top of everything else we've already talked about.
Yeah. It applies if you're sponsoring someone for a skilled worker visa.
So our software engineer, our marketing director, they'd fall under that.
Most likely, yes. And those in the senior or specialist worker categories, too.
Okay, so those high-level roles.
Exactly. They want to encourage companies to invest in UK workers where possible.
So are there any exceptions? Anytime I might dodge this immigration skills charge bullet.
There are a few exemptions, yeah.
Tell me more.
You don't have to pay it for certain scientific or research-based roles.
So if I'm sponsoring a brilliant biologist or physicist,
You might be off the hook. There's a list of eligible occupations on Gov UK.
STEM fields sounds like they're in luck. Any other loopholes to be aware of?
You might also be exempt if the worker got their certificate before April 6th, 2017.
Ah, so those older cases, they might have different rules.
It's always worth double-checking, but for most new applications.
Immigration skills charge is something to factor in.
Absolutely. It's part of the budgeting process.
Okay, so let's say the visa application is refused.
Fingers crossed that doesn't happen, but it's good to be prepared.
Is all that money, the fees, the charges, is it just gone?
Here's some good news. You get a full refund for the immigration skills charge if the visa's refused.
I thank goodness. There's a safety net after all.
Exactly. And you also get a refund if the applicant gets approved, but
But then they decide not to come after all. Maybe they got a better offer.
it happens. You get your money back in those cases, too.
That's reassuring. It's not quite as rigid as it seems at first.
Right. There's some flexibility built in.
So we've covered a lot today. Eligibility, license types, certificates, fees, charges.
We've really gone down the rabbit hole.
It's a lot to wrap your head around, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
It's complex, no doubt, but the information is out there.
gov.uk. That's the website to bookmark, right?
Absolutely. Spend some time on there, get familiar with the resources.
And if all else fails,
Don't hesitate to reach out to their business help desk.
sometimes you just need to talk to a human being.
They can give you personalized guidance, answer your specific questions.
Well, there you have it, folks. Navigating UK visa sponsorship.
It's a journey, that's for sure.
But hopefully we've given you the tools and knowledge to get started.
And remember, the UKVI, they're not the enemy.
They're just trying to manage a complex system.
And make sure everything's done fairly and above board.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave you with this thought.
Something to ponder.
As you navigate this process, think about what it says about the UK's place in the world.
It's a balancing act, attracting global talent while protecting its workforce.
It's a topic that sparks a lot of debate, with no easy answers.
But hopefully this deep dive has given you a better understanding of how it all works.
And who knows, maybe it's even inspired you to take the leap and sponsor someone yourself. Until next time.